Hello, I'm Craig from Carshalton Advisory. This tutorial series covers the Excel 2019 Expert Curriculum. Download Microsoft's example files linked in the description and we'll work through them together as we continue section 1.1, Managing Workbooks. Let's get started. So we're going to reopen the 11A workbook that we had previously. I'm going to hit Control O to open. I'm going to hit Browse. Now that file is here in my recently viewed document list, but we'll just go through the process of browsing into the directory, double-clicking my Excel 11A file, and it's now opened up for us. What we're going to do is demonstrate how an external reference works. Now, I'm going to caution you, try not to use external references. They will cause you all sorts of grief. So if at all possible, don't do this. It's important that you know how to do this, and one good reason to know how to do this is because someone's going to send you files and it's going to have external links, and you're going to get an alert that they're broken, and now you're going to have to fix them all or figure out if you need to fix them. But they're kind of a pain in the ass, so avoid them when you can, but here's how we do them. So we're going to go into cell A2 here in the upper left of our 11A file. We are going to hit equals to start a formula, and now we're going to switch to the 11B tab. So you could use your mouse, but you know me, I'm just going to Alt Tab and find my other file. There we go. I'm going to go into cell A1 with my arrow keys to select them, and I'm going to hit enter. Actually, before I do that, you'll see here that it's actually showing the status of my formula, and it's showing where I've got and what cell I've entered into. So now I'm going to hit enter. And what we have now is an external reference in the cell. So when I click on cell A2, here's my formula. And what this is telling me is that we are going to go to the Excel 11B file. So that's what the square brackets are for. We're going to go to our inventory tab. And then what we're going to do is go to cell A1. So essentially it's an address. And if it was in a different folder, you'd actually see all the way from what hard drive, your C drive, all the way down through documents, and all the way a path to get to the document that you want, or the cell that you want. But there's a couple things that happen. And it's why I typically don't recommend doing this if you can avoid it. First off, if I was to go to my inventory worksheet, so let's Alt-Tab back to here. So right now, let's type in a value here. 100, we'll go back, and sure enough, that 100 is now carried over into this other workbook. The problem arises that in the future, let's say I save this and close this file. And now here's this inventory tab here. There's that 100 that I had linked, and that's the value that I want brought into my other document for whatever reason. But now let's say in the future, I don't realize, or someone else doesn't realize that this is a linked number, and they add in some new rows, and they add something that's completely unrelated here, like 8500. And if they save this file, now the next time we open up our 11A file here, you'll notice that this value has now stayed in cell A1, okay, which brings the 8500. Now it doesn't tell me that the other document has changed or that the references have changed, and so now I have this 8500 that's pulled when what I really wanted was the 100 that was from the other document. So this is one area where links are dangerous to use. The second thing that happens is that if I rename my other file or I change its location, Excel isn't able to track that. All it's doing is it's trying to find the path to go back to this file in this location, this tab, and this cell number. And if that other document gets renamed or moved, Excel can't find it anymore, and when I open my file, it's going to come up with a warning that Excel can't find a link, which is kind of annoying because Excel doesn't do a very good job of helping you find where those links are located. If you're lucky, I will record a set of videos that go through the steps that I do in order to fix someone else's document that has broken links. But we won't get into that right now just yet. But we've confirmed that this external reference is working, and we've seen an example of why we want to be really cautious before we start using them. All right, lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to open up our 11C file here. Okay, and so I've navigated to my directory. I'm going to open up that 11C file, and we're going to change our auto recovery time. So what happens is, as I'm working in Excel, Excel every so often will make a backup copy for me in the background. Now that's typically hidden in a temporary directory, and so I don't really know that it's there. But if the power goes out, if my Excel crashes, it gives me a way to recover my work that has happened, and I won't have to go back and redo everything for hours. So how we get to that is in our file options here. So we're going to hit Alt, we'll hit F for File, and then right down at the bottom left-hand corner is Options, and it has that T floating above it. So I'm going to select T to open up options. Now I could have used my mouse to do that, but I'm an Excel expert and you're going to be one too. So we're going to use our keyboard. And what we want to do is work with our autosave function. And once this option dialog box is open, we can actually still use our keyboard, although even I often default to my mouse once I get here. But all I need to do is select S, and I go to the save. And in here, here's my autosave information. So I can toggle this on or off. It saves them in an Excel workbook file, and here's what we've been asked to change with our recovery interval. So normally what happens every 5 minutes, Excel's going to save a copy in the background. I'm going to change this to 1 minute, like it has in the description. We'll click OK. And so now every minute, Excel is going to start making some changes. Now what they want us to do is make some changes here. And so we'll change our discount rate to 5% and our term to 10 years. And now we need to wait for at least 1 minute. Okay, and so what's happening normally? Excel does this every 5 minutes, and so if you're like I mentioned before, if your document crashes or your computer crashes, you'll be able to go back and retrieve what you were last working on 5 minutes ago. So you haven't lost a day or an hour's worth of work. We've accelerated this in order to quickly demonstrate how it works. Normally, a 1 minute autosave is probably too frequent for you. What will happen is, especially on a larger file, it often takes 2 or 3 seconds in order to do that background save, and you'll notice the responsiveness of Excel hanging up. So if you have a document with a lot of calculations in it, and saving normally takes a couple seconds, well, every time it autosaves, you're going to get a little bit of a delay or a hesitation while that process occurs. So having it too frequent can be a little bit frustrating. The other thing that happens, and we'll see this demonstration here in a second, is that when we go to review and recover, if it saves every minute, you're going to have a whole great big list, and it can be a little overwhelming to figure out which version you want to restore it back to. So we will return it to 5 minutes after we've completed this particular example here. So what Excel has done, and I'll make a couple comments while we wait for our minute. So what the author, I should say, has done is provided a simple little loan calculation. And depending on our inputs, it will tell us how much we're going to have to pay per month. Now, there's a couple bad usability things that the author has done. For one, it's not immediately obvious which cells I should or shouldn't change. So one thing you'll always see me do is to label my input cells, the ones that I could change. Now I can look here and see there's no formula, so I'm probably safe to change these things. Now when I get to these bolded ones, okay, so here's my formula. These are the ones that are Excel's working. So I wouldn't want to come in here and overtype this cell right here, because that's where the work's being done. So what I typically do is I mark all of my cells as inputs. And so I've used that macro that we recorded in the last video, and just by hitting Control-Shift-I, it's applied the input style. Now, the Excel's default input style is a little garish and isn't what I would normally use, but since it's the default here, we'll go with it. But now my user would immediately know that these cells are different, and by marking them this way, they know that they're safe to change. All right, so we've waited for at least 1 minute here. Thanks for hanging in with me. And what we're going to do is change another cell here. So our changes will be the input, but we'll do one more here just in case. We'll go to 20, and we'll wait for another minute here, and we'll see how Excel handles the autosave process here. All right, it's been a minute in my world. So what we're going to do now is we're going to recover one of our earlier versions here. So what we need to do here is we're going to go into our file ribbon. So I'm going to just hit Alt and F. Once I'm in here, we're going to go to Info, which is over here on the left-hand side. So I'll hit my I key to get into here. And down here, we have the Manage Workbook section. So this shows me the list of auto-recovered workbooks that are there in the background. When I click on this, it now opens up a new file for me, or excuse me, not necessarily a new file, but my old file for me. So you notice here are the values before we made the changes, before we changed the formatting. So if I decided I really didn't like how this revised version looked, or I had made a mistake, I can quickly go back and find a previous version, so I haven't squandered all of that effort. I can say, nah, I want to start from here and progress from this point. So this is actually a very helpful feature. I use it more often than I would like to admit. The key is finding the right auto restore interval for you, whether you want to have it at the 1 minute, at the 5 minute, or even a 10 minute, depending on the size and how complicated the document that you're using is. Thanks again for watching. This is Craig with Carshalton Advisory. Make sure that you subscribe, give a thumbs up, or even check out my Patreon and help me out here with a coffee or a lunch. We'll see you next time.